If you feel like you've hit a wall, it might not be there to stop you. It might be there to show you what you're not supposed to carry anymore. Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dyer. Today, I'm talking to Scott Lackey about those moments when life splits into two, the before and the after. We're exploring how to rebuild everything you thought you were has been stripped away. Scott Lackey is a man who knows exactly what it feels like to have the ground disappear beneath his feet. After securing millions of funding for an invention he poured his heart and soul into, he found himself suddenly pushed out and bankrupt, forced to tell his pregnant wife that they had lost it all. That moment became the catalyst for a deeper understanding of human resilience. With a background that spans military combat and high-stakes endurance, Scott now focuses on helping others rebuild their identity after life hits them hard. He is the author and speaker who believes that true growth isn't by adding more to your life, it's about having the courage to subtract what no longer serves you. Scott, it's a real privilege to have you here on the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. And it is great to be here, my friend. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity to discuss, I really believe, this important topic today in many people's lives.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Scott, before we go into questions, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey in life. How did you get here?
Yeah, what a great question. I know you ask everybody that. I've noticed on your other podcast. And for me, it's a story that I like to tell, even in the book that I recently published. Is I feel like I have like a cat a little bit, like I have 9 lives. I've lived 9 lives. And what I mean by that is there's just been numerous times in my life where what I like to describe as lightning strikes have arrived. Some voluntary, most involuntary. And what I define as a lightning strike is when something radically changes in your life and it changes who you are forevermore. You can't go back to that person anymore. So the course that you were on is no longer achievable or attainable. And so that's, through a series of lightning strikes in my life, that's actually how I got to where I am today, as a better version of myself and much lighter on my feet for sure, having left a lot of things behind that no longer serve me.
Now, you talk about the lightning strike moment when you lost your company and you had to go home and tell your wife. What did that moment actually reveal about who you were back then?
Yeah. Just to put it in context for the listeners, you alluded to it in the opening, and thank you for that. So it was my second invention, and it was something that my wife was, deeply in love with because it was a product called a childhood health passport. And like you mentioned, everything that we had, which was not a lot, but everything that we had was invested in the company. And a private equity firm believed in the business plan, and we signed an agreement to invest $3 million in the company. And 6 months later, approximately, the private equity firm decided that they were going to fire the management team and take it for themselves. And when they did that, it left us, absolutely eviscerated. And as you described. And so at the time, as you just mentioned, my wife was pregnant with my daughter, and our son was about 2.5 years old. And interesting in that on the way home, as I was driving by, that we were living in Dallas, Texas, or near Dallas at this point in time. And on the way home, I was driving by the mall, and I remembered that about that time, my wife was inside getting some pictures taken with my son. And so I stopped to go in and see them, and I put on the best display of nothing's wrong I probably ever have in my life, because I wasn't ready to tell her what happened while those pictures were being taken. I didn't even know what to say. So when something so dramatic happens in your life and you know that you've literally, not figuratively, but you have literally lost everything, you don't know what to do. I needed a few hours to drive around and search my soul for not only how am I going to tell her, what does tomorrow look like? And, ultimately sitting down and trying to explain this, what happened, again, so instantaneously, she was in shock. And there's just no other way to describe it, that you go through all of the emotions that you would imagine from, you have fear and you have panic, and then there's rage, and then there's anger, and then there's resentment, and there's attack, and just every single human emotion that you can imagine. And for people maybe out there living their life right now, maybe not at the extreme that I'm describing, but they wake up, like the title of my book, they wake up every day just to die a little bit more. There are some things that you need to do to get control of, because if you don't, that spirals into a place that is not healthy for you or your family.
Yeah. That drive would have been really hard. What was the hardest thing to admit to yourself in that moment?
I can't say that it was, again, I can't say in that moment, because it was just shock and awe.
Mm.
It took days before I was able to start really internalizing what happened. So the answer to your question, the biggest thing, that I had to admit, and again, this came in time, was what actually went wrong and
Mm,
taking responsibility for being a contributor to what went wrong. Because when things happen in most people's lives, what we want to do is blame the world and blame everybody else because we had nothing to do with it. And that certainly, wasn't the case. And that doesn't excuse their behavior. But in time, I looked back on everything that happened. And while this is not the case, I'm just saying this is a decision that I made. I made a decision that I was going to take responsibility for what happened so that I could move on and not have that weight hanging over me and having control, or if not a control, influence over my decision making in my life. That's one of the beautiful things, whether you were at fault or not, or a partially contributor. It's a very powerful skill set when you can take personal responsibility in even the extreme situations of what's happening in your life. It no longer has power over you. That's a very freeing state to be so that you can move forward.
yeah, so you took responsibility. What would you say was the learning for you out of that situation?
Yeah. The real lesson for me did not come until a couple of years later, right? Meaning I learned a lot of lessons, but the major lesson that came out of this was when this idea popped into my head, when this thought landed in my head, this fully formed thought, I was actually sitting in a neonatal intensive care unit at a children's hospital in Fort Worth, Texas, late on a Friday night, holding a little preemie baby. I was a medical sales rep at the time. And so this fully formed thought, which as far as I'm concerned at the time came from God, of what this looked like. Again, 2 years later, when all this drama happened, the thought when I was going through all these emotions of what happened, why did this happen? Why me? All of that stuff that you go through, this single word came to me, and the word was stewardship. And I had this huge epiphany, this huge almost peace when that word came to me of stewardship. Because as I looked back over the time of building up the business and getting funding in the first few months of operation, I was operating under the mindset of ownership. And there's an extraordinary difference as human beings when we operate under the mindset of being stewards versus being owners. It changes everything. And so that actually carried forward with me heavily, even through my life today, is to have a mindship or a mindset of everything that I'm doing, including my health or how I treat other people or possessions, is that treat them under the mindset of being a good steward versus having ownership. And that changes everything. And as it did for me when you have that mindset. And that was my biggest lesson.
Yeah, I guess you see it differently when you're a steward, right? Because you got to look after the things that you've got.
100%, man.
Yeah, yeah,
100%. And
yeah,
it takes you, the stewardship mindset will change your life course in such a manner. We're not talking about 3 degrees of change here. It will change it so significantly that you will end up in an entirely different place, operating out of stewardship versus ownership.
yeah. And I would say that a lot of businesses and organizations could take uh, could take that on board as well. Yeah,
It would certainly improve their culture because the way you treat people from a stewardship mindset versus ownership changes everything.
yeah,
Not just your outcomes, it changes every relationship you're involved in.
yeah, absolutely agree, 100%. Now, I love the idea that the wall isn't there to stop us, but it's there to show us uh, what we can take with us. Hey, look, I think I've pretty much hit that wall many times in my life. How do we figure out what actually is actually meant to drop at that point?
Yeah. I'm glad you used the analogy of wall. It's something I refer to right in the book.
Mm,
Is that, I'm going to make this kind of bland statement here, right? You can't outrun yourself. I say that because one of the recommendations that I share with people is if you'll stop for just a moment and turn from whatever it is that you're in fear of or whatever it is that you believe is chasing you. Okay. This isn't a carrot and a stick thing. No, you're running from something. And so if you'll turn and address that, that's the wall. Okay. You're
mm,
running, but you're running parallel. You're not
mm,
you're not moving forward. You feel like you are. So many people go home exhausted every day and they didn't do anything. So the point that I'm trying to make is that turning around and facing that echo that's in that place in your mind that you can't quite find, that fear that's driving you, facing that, reconciling that. That's what, in my experience, right? One of the single most important things you can do is you've got to reconcile that so that you can move forward and be the version of yourself that you should be.
yeah. And why is it so much harder to let go than just to push through?
Why is it harder to let go than push through? I love that
Yeah.
question. I
Yeah.
love that question. And my answer to that again is always through my lens. And I know
Yeah.
everybody is on their own journey, but I'm going to answer it through my lens. It's because we always underestimate the consequences. Always. We overthink and we overestimate the consequences of addressing what is chasing us, what we're dealing with, the problem that we have. And we absolutely always underestimate the consequences of not dealing with it.
Mm,
Okay. And so when you're overestimating the wrong one and you're underestimating the other one, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And you keep waking up and go, wow, why is it that I keep getting here? Why does this keep happening to me? And you need to look in the mirror because the problem is you, not anybody else. It's what you're not addressing. So I'll say a second thing. A second thing is for those out there who are maybe very successful right now. And you're like, wow, I shouldn't feel this way. I've done this, I've done that, I have this position, this title, these possessions. Okay. Sorry to tell you that those things don't fill the black hole on the inside. That's one of the beautiful things about successes or success is that you can hide behind that for a very long time. But when that success starts to falter or the lightning strike shows up and, hey, you've been fired, it's going to catch up with you real quick. So the sooner
yeah.
you address it, whatever it is, the better off you're going to be. And don't
Yeah. It's,
overestimate the price of doing that. The price
mm,
of not doing it is far more than addressing what you're not dealing with inside yourself.
yeah. And it's going to hit you harder if you're not aware of it.
That's the underestimation.
Like for me personally, I've been through many restructures and redundancies, and it was a pattern that was appearing, but I couldn't see it. It wasn't until I was actually aware of the pattern and going, well, why does this keep happening? But in the beginning, it was like, why does this keep happening to me? But then when I realized it's actually there's probably parts of me that are contributing to this, and but it's also happening for me because the universe, God's trying to tell me something here that, hey, this is not working. You got to do something different, right? And then each one feels harder and harder and harder. But
That's right.
you do build up the resilience. Although once you come to the realization, then you see it in a different way, and then you take different action, different towards it. So, what is one thing you've had to leave behind?
Well, this is going to be counterintuitive when I say this. All right. But one thing that I constantly have to leave behind is me.
Mm,
All right. And so let me explain what I mean by that. Several years ago, thought came to me when I was training for my first 140.6 mile Ironman race. And the question was, Scott, what are you willing to sacrifice? And I would say things like, television and I'm going to eat right and time. And no, that's not what I'm asking for. You're going to have to do that anyway, Scott. I really need to know what you're going to sacrifice. And it took 45-ish days before it dawned on me on a run one day. Oh my God, I know the answer to the question. The answer to the question is I need to sacrifice myself. So what do you mean by that? What do you mean by figuratively sacrificing yourself? Well, what it means is it led me to this statement that's in my book, which is the more of myself that I sacrifice, the more of myself I find. So it's through service that I gain the things that fill me versus possessions, which leave me empty. So it's the act of service unto others. That's sacrificing oneself. Is that what I do for my son and my wife and my daughter, many times unbeknownst to them, I'm sacrificing things because I want them to have.
mm,
And so that's what I mean by sacrificing self, using family as an example. If I do without to serve another, and I struggle with this, right? But when I do without to serve someone else, maybe not in that moment, but as time goes by, I get extraordinary fulfillment out of that peace and joy, contentment, thankfulness, gratitude come from those activities, but it's through the act of sacrifice,
mm,
not through the act of buying something, going on a vacation. None of that crap gives me fulfillment. It makes me intermittently and happy for the short term. I love going on a great vacation, but coming back from that vacation leaves me wanting, not fulfilled.
mm.
Okay. So I hope that differentiation, makes a sense is that it's not a single thing. This is a constant battle that I have to work on, which is looking for opportunities to sacrifice things that maybe I would do for myself and doing that for others. Yeah, because that's where I gain fulfillment out of that.
Yeah. And for example, this episode here is a sacrifice. You're sacrificing and you're giving to others because, what you're sharing here is going to touch different, people who are listening to this.
Let me give you another example. So in my book, right, the title of my book is Wake Up to Die Again.
Hmm.
Okay. And it's a provocative title, and it's meant to be because most people in the world, Anthony, you know this, they wake up every day just to die a little bit more.
Mm,
They lose a part of themselves every day and they wake up just empty, and it gets worse. But then there's another part of us that when we give up those things that are weighting us down, when we wake up to die again, it's a beautiful thing. It's the act of service, right? And that's the gift we give ourselves. And so I'm using that example because it's not what the world tells us of one more possession just over the hill, around the corner, you're almost there. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There is no destination. You're not going to get there, right? You have to learn to be happy, to be thankful, to be peaceful, to be joyful exactly where you're standing because there's no distance you can travel to obtain it.
yeah. I was listening to Sadhguru yesterday on Peter Bet David's podcast. It was just a
Yeah.
little, and Sadhguru was saying is that, was it 45, 50 years ago, he said he was going to change the world and he had this vision, right, of what he wanted to do. He said that he blissfully admits that he's never going to get there, but he's going to fail blissfully,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
another saying, I can't remember, it's in my book. I don't remember what chapter it's in, but it's in my book where it says, there was a day that I went out into the world to change the world, but now I am wise and I'm going to change myself,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
It's the inverse is that if you want to change the world, you better fix yourself first, right? Because
100.
if you fix yourself first, then that means you're going to have a better relationship, not only with yourself, but that's going to bleed over to your wife, your husband, your son, your daughter, your aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, neighbors, friends, colleagues. There's a flood that comes from that, right? I was on another podcast about happiness. This guy talks about happiness, and it's like, it's so crazy to think that if you chase happiness, you never find it. And so if you can't find it, then where is happiness? It's in the place you're unwilling to look.
It's within you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The one
Yeah.
place you're not willing to look.
Yeah. And this is it. Most people are not willing to look internally and figure out what's going on for us.
Scary of the dark places in there.
Yeah. There's a lot of shadows and things in there, but doing that work actually it's so amazing because you discover who you are. People say I'm looking for my tribe or I'm trying to find myself. It's like, well, you're not going to find yourself out there. You got to look inside.
One of the statements I wrote in my book, and I say it better in the book, but it was something to the effect of when you decide to go on a pursuit to look for your lost self, it's not that you necessarily find yourself again as much as you find the someone you used to be.
Mm,
It's a beautiful exercise to go out and challenge ourselves. And again, to go on those adventures internally to find out who we are.
yeah.
Those are the best adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said before about we never get there is because we're always shifting identities. We're always becoming a different version of ourselves. And what we talked about before is about letting go, is that we've got to let go of our old versions because we can't move forward to discover the new version of us if we did
It wasn't
holding on
meant to go forward.
no. Yeah, exactly. You mean to leave it and move into the next version of yourself. I really want you to share a little bit about your journey in the military and what got you into the Iron Man, Iron Man, and all those kind of sports that you do,
Endurance.
and then what inspired you endurance. That's your book.
Back to the military. When I was in high school here in America, I was a good basketball player, really good basketball player, capable of going to college and playing basketball. I was a decent track athlete, long jump, or high jump, I should say. But anyway, that's all I cared about was I lived for the day. I mean, that was a period of time in my life that I did not think about tomorrow. I lived in today and it was a wonderful life. I had a great family, right? 6 or so months before I was getting ready to graduate, a teacher and my high school basketball coach and my parents kind of interrupted my life by forcing me to think about the future. And when I started thinking about the future, it honestly made me panic because I had no clue what to do, where to go, how to do it, when to do it. As a matter of fact, my dad sat me down on one Saturday with my mom, and he wanted to give me 3 things to consider that were very important after high school. And he said, these things are not in any order. and you can pick from any one of them. But here are the three options I wanted to give you. And they were go to college, and go to college. Those were my three options. I was like, what? It's not funny, you know, but it just caused me to panic. Anyway, fast forward a couple of weeks later, a Friday, Saturday night, I don't remember. I was laying in my bed, had a small TV in my room, and this American commercial came on with tanks on the screen and soldiers and helicopters. And, you know, in America, this was a famous commercial back in the late 80s. And it said, be all you can be in the United States Army. We do more before 8 a.m. than most people do all day. And Anthony, I sat up out of my bed, chills on my spine. And I don't know how I knew this, but I was like, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm.
I'm supposed to join the Army. And again, that was a lightning strike, because where I mentally was just seconds before that, in panic and fear, gut-wrenching panic of what am I going to do, was gone. Absolutely gone, because of a commercial and this instant knowledge I was supposed to do that. So I'm spending time talking about that, because this is part of my journey of addressing these internal emotions of where does this come from and not running from it. That's an early story. And so I did join the Army, and I did spend 4 years of active duty and 4 years with the National Guard, 8 years total. I did go to Germany for 2 years. I did go to the first Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was in Iraq. I was in Saudi Arabia. I was in Kuwait, with the American 1st Infantry Division, what's called the Big Red One. I did all those things. And when I left the military to go to college after my first 4 years of active duty, I left with 3 words that I carry with me today. They're powerful words in the military, and that's make it happen. And when you think about those 3 words, they don't care about anything else. They care about themselves. Make it happen, whatever that means. Obviously, legally, but I carry that with me today, and that is my mindset. But I've certainly matured in how I use it, because I can tell you early in my life, that make it happen mentality also took me some places I wasn't supposed to be. Now let's jump forward. You mentioned how do you do those things and then roll into triathlons, right? And again, many years before I did an Ironman, I did shorter races, sprint races, Olympic distance races. But the first time I ever saw a triathlon was on television when it used to be broadcast. And I knew then, just like going in the military, that I wanted to do an Ironman race. I wanted to know what that felt like. I wanted to cross that finish line. I wanted to do what I believe to be, what many believe to be, the world's hardest endurance event, right? But I never did for a long, 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 long time. And then COVID comes. We all remember COVID, don't we? So it was different here in Georgia, where I am in the United States. We didn't have it as hard as really the rest of the world. Matter of fact, it was easy. Got to know my neighbors better. My wife's a teacher. She was home during that summer. When I was working from home, we would take walks together at lunch and have lunch together. And I would work from home. I mean, everything was fun. Kids are healthy. Everything's going great. But Anthony, this little stupid voice that we all have in our head pops in my brain. And that little voice said, you're not where you're supposed to be. I'm like, wait, time out. Where does that come from? And I just ignored it. Shut up, ignored it. But again, progressively, Anthony, every day that went by, that voice got louder, and it was repetitive with a degree of frequency. You're not where you're supposed to be. And like that story I told you earlier, where the voice came to my head that said stewardship, this time a different word popped in my head. Again, remember, I'm practicing what I'm preaching to the audience. Is I didn't run from the voice. I turned around and said, I need to know what this means. Right. So I'm demonstrating for the audience, what does this look like in your life? And so I turned around mentally. What do you mean I'm not where I'm supposed to be? And the next 2 words that came in my thought that came to me was broken promises. What do you mean broken promises? What the hell are you talking about? And then this flood of thoughts, it was like the dam broke. Scott, do you remember when you said you were going to do the Ironman? Yeah. Where are we at? Remember when you said you were going to write that book? Where are we at on that one? Remember when you said you were going to do this? Remember when you said you were going to do that? And I was like, damn. Well, the one thing that stirred something inside me again was the thought of doing the Ironman. And I said, you know what? Can't travel right now. I got plenty of time to work out. It's time to do the Ironman. And I didn't tell anybody, Anthony. I went and found a race in Arizona, Tempe, Arizona, near Phoenix. Signed up, paid the money. It was 11 and a half months away. Anything about it, because I had done triathlons before. But after about 30, 45 days, they said, this is different. And sitting around the dinner table one night, they decided they were going to corner Dad and find out what the heck was going on. But that's how the Ironman race came about, man. It was that thought in my head, you're not where you're supposed to be. And then when I addressed that, the next thought was broken promises. And if this is part of the challenge for your listeners, is that if you're going to turn around mentally and you're going to address the things that you're not addressing in your life, and you know what they are. I don't have to tell you. Everybody knows what they are. But when you turn around and start addressing those things, then you have to make a decision. Accept it and live with it and tell yourself the truth. This is who you are, or you need to do something about it.
Mm,
My encouragement to everyone is make the right choice and do something. Honor yourself through that. Doesn't matter what happens. Do it.
yeah.
Anyway, and I'm a better man for it because training for the Ironman race and then doing the Ironman race changed me as a human being to a person that I'm different now. That's a shorter.
Before
Oh, go
before
ahead.
we
Yeah.
go into the book, what I was going to say was that when you do work out exactly what you're putting off and what you're doing, you've got to shut everyone else out and just focus on you, because everyone else will tell you what's possible, what's not possible.
And they did.
Yeah, but you've got to stay true to yourself.
I'm
Yeah.
not picking on my family at all, but they were the first people to learn of what I was going to do.
Mm,
And they were like, "You're crazy." And of course I laughed because, my family, we speak transparently, to each other, and I was okay with that.
mm,
But, I just told him, I said, "Listen, I don't expect you to understand. I love you. That doesn't change anything, but I'm doing this. And I've always wanted to do this and I'm going to do it." And anyway, that was just the mindset. I would have rolled across the finish line if I had to, because I made up my mind. I am going to do X, right? And that was an Ironman. And then,
yeah.
11 months later, I ran across that finish line and my wife and my daughter were there to greet me. And it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah. And sometimes you've got to, when you know you've got to do some of the hard things to become the person that you're destined to be, right? You've got to do those hard things, and you can't put those off. You just got to do them. And
When you make a choice to do hard things, you're going to change your elevation.
mm,
Okay. As your elevation changes because of your behavior, it's going to create distance
mm,
between you and everybody else. And in the beginning, the distance is no problem because we can still talk. But eventually, that elevation gets high enough that people can't see the same things you see anymore. And they begin to tell you that this is this and this is that. But you're high enough that you can see other things and you're like, that's not true anymore. My elevation has given me a different vision. And if that elevation continues, you're going to get high enough that they can't come with you anymore. And that's the hard part, because there's going to be, and hear me when I say this, there is going to be a lot of people in your life that if you choose to change, if you choose to get better, if you choose to fix yourself, they can't come on the journey with you
vibrationally, energy-wise, they are in a different vibration to you, and so they will fall off. And this happens all the time, where
all the time.
people in our lives just fall off, fall away, and we're not aligned anymore to those people, right? We may still love them and care about them.
It's interesting is that as you change, you begin to notice those who talk about how they've changed and haven't versus those who never say anything, but they've changed.
Mm,
It's the saying, a lion doesn't have to tell me he's a lion.
yeah, exactly. Now let's explore the book writing side of things. Yeah, what inspires you to write that book?
Yeah. So again, I always wanted to write a book, always. I'm glad I chose to do the Ironman first because of the things that I learned training for the Ironman that were going to be very important skills to writing a book. I finished the Ironman race. I continue to do half Ironmans moving forward. And I began to, contemplate, okay, now that I've done the Ironman, no more broken promise. Scott, what was one of those other big broken promises that you told yourself about? Writing the book, that was a big one. And that
Mm,
was important to me. So I made the decision that it's time to start writing the book. And of course, when you say that, you don't even know where to start. You know what I mean? And that was where this lesson that again I write about in the book is that you don't have to know anything more than a few steps ahead, because as you walk the way, I strongly believe this, as you walk the way will appear, right? There's a passage in the Bible that I love where it says, I will be a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path. That's what that means. Walk the way and the way will appear. And so I didn't know anything about writing a book. And so I began doing my homework and walking the way. And yes, the way appeared. People's paths crossed my path. I found people. I asked questions. I did my homework and the way always appeared. Sometimes I went a little bit too far to the left or a little bit too far to the right. But again, I was moving in the direction of writing a book. And so, but in that early stage, I think I mentioned earlier that question that came to me in the early days of training for an Ironman, Scott, what are you willing to sacrifice? Right? That's a question, Anthony, I ask myself all the time. And that question came back during the early phases of the book. Scott, okay, you're going to write a book now. I get it. We're on the same page. You're doing what you agreed to. But I've got to ask you the question again, Scott. What are you willing to sacrifice to write the book? And I
Mm,
did the normal things, oh, time, and I'm going to work on weekends, and I'm going to do this. And no, Scott. Those are the things you're going to have to do anyway. I'm looking
mm,
for the answer again. And Anthony, I gave it a lot of thought. And to your listeners, this was a monumental moment because I came back to the same answer again. I see if I'm going to write a book that actually means something and has value to other people, I'm going to have to sacrifice myself again. So, what does that look like in the book? What does sacrificing yourself look like in the book? Well, what it looks like is I'm not the hero. That means I have to be vulnerable. That means I have to be transparent. That means if there was an event in my life that made me cry, I'm going to have to expose that. That's sacrificing yourself, right? Well, why in God's name would you go through a book like this and sacrifice yourself? Because I know how to get out now. And
mm,
I want to share that story with other people because they need help to get out. I didn't have that. There was nobody there. There's nobody that said, Scott, let me come alongside you. Let me partner with you. No, that crap didn't exist for me. Okay. And I made a promise to myself. There's another one. I'm not going to break this promise that in writing the book, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be honest. And I'm going to tell a story. By the way, lived experiences, Anthony. I'm not telling you a story about somebody else and then telling you what to think about it. I'm telling a series of stories across 24 chapters that are lived experience that is already changing people's lives who've already read the book. Changing it in what way? I don't give them the 7 steps to get everything you want in life. That's a lie. All I'm doing is sharing with them my journey and maybe they could take some tools from my journey and put in their toolbox to help them. That's all I'm doing. But the only way to be able to do that, Anthony, was I had to sacrifice myself in the book, right? So I hope that makes sense. And I can tell you, your listeners, all I can tell you is what the beta readers have told me, and it is an exciting book that has already helped some people.
yeah, amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Writing that book would have been challenging in the sense that, like you said, you had to be vulnerable. You had to show up as and be able to relive all of those experiences. And through that, though, healing comes, right? You let, yeah,
Thankfully, the healing was before the book.
mm,
Thankfully, right? But, and then here's the but, is still, it does make you revisit some questions that you haven't thought about in a long time.
mm,
You know what I mean? And, just an example, since we talked about it earlier, man, how would my life be different if the product that I invented, that my family was involved in the business, that was funded by private equity for $3 million, and it was a childhood health passport, and we were helping children and parents and families? What if it would have worked? Where would that be? Who knows? Right?
yeah,
And it does make you revisit those things. But even when I say that, I don't have a sore spot in my soul over. I don't. You know what I mean? But it does sometimes make you wonder because we've all read the stories about how did he or she make all their money or how did they get this? We've read the success stories. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But in my book, what all of it has taught me, right, is that the gifts are actually in the failure, not the success.
100%. And, like like you talked about like other people succeeding and so on. But when you look back at the journey that they went on to get there, for some people, it was horrendous, right? People live, yeah,
It's I would change the word from horrendous to horrific
horrific.
because, and I use that word horrific because I have worked with billionaires. I have worked with millionaires. I've been on mission trips to Nicaragua and pretty much categorically in my life, the people that have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, right? Self-control, all of those people, not the wealthy.
Mm,
I'm not saying they don't exist. It's just not been my experience.
yeah, yeah. Now, Scott, you've mentioned that adversity reveals the internal programming already that's running in our lives. What does that programming usually look like for someone who's focused on performance?
Yeah, it becomes, and again, I have personally experienced this, so I'm just going to speak from my lived experiences that if you're not careful, performance is a giant tent that you hide under, and while everything is going on the outside is in chaos. And if chaos is too strong of a word, maybe uncomfortable. That's what it looks like. Performance is one of the greatest, I don't mean that in a good way, but one of the greatest and easiest places to hide when things are going wrong because the world's telling you, it's okay. You're good, man. Here's the title. Here's the money. Here's the boat. Here's the vacation. Here's the house. Here's the car. Here's the, you know what I mean? You've got all of the outward signs, performance, right? You have all of the outward signs that you've got it all together. And I really don't care about those things. What I want to know is tell me who you are at 2 o'clock in the morning when you wake up.
Mm,
I want to know that person, right? Tell me when you are when that thought creeps in because the boss came by and said things aren't working out. Or how about someone close to you got the diagnosis? Tell me who you are because I don't care about your possessions because I can assure you, you know this and I know this. If possessions are what defines us, then most of us are in trouble. But we know that's true.
yeah, yeah. And where does this programming come from? Is it from fear or from a need to control?
Well, you could say it's both, right?
Mm,
Fear, because generally speaking, everybody's running from something. Fear of failure. Hell, I even know people they're fearful of success. Think about that for a minute. They'll sabotage it in a heartbeat. How
mm,
about fear of change? How many people do
mm,
we know that are fearful of change? They'll do anything to maintain the status quo. Anything. So fear is very happily embedded in the world today in how people operate.
mm.
What was the second one that you used? Fear or
Control.
control?
Yeah.
Wow. Don't we love that word? What an illusion.
Mm.
What an illusion.
We're never in control of anything.
You're in control of anything. I say this in my book reach into that bucket of water and grab me a handful of water. Show me how much control you're in. The tighter you squeeze, the less water you've got. But you know what? When you keep your hand open in the water, that's a stewardship mindset. Your hand is open at stewardship. You can move the water. You can move your life with an open hand versus reaching in and thinking you're in control and making a fist inside water. But how does control, why is it that we want control? Well, I'll tell you what, control, you know what control is fed by? What fuels control is fear. That's why I said it's both. They go hand in hand. And we know we're not in control. And matter of fact, Anthony, if I was in control, do you think that health passport would not have worked? Right? Think they would have fired me? And I'll give you one quick story about that health passport. When we were on the phone right before being fired, but they never used the word fired, by the way. They said you're terminated, like I was an insect,
Oh my gosh.
right?
Yeah.
But right before that happened, the management team, we said to them, when they said, you're going to turn right, and we said, we're not turning right, we're maintaining course, right? We had the power because of our founding of the company and our titles. We had the power to say that. But the investors who had the money had control.
Mm,
And therein lies the difference. Power gives you authority to say things,
mhm,
but control sits in silence, watching and laughing at you because we don't have it.
yeah.
So that was a big lesson in power versus control. I had the power to say that, but they had the control, right?
Mm, mm,
That's why
yeah.
control is such a laughable word.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
I hope that
And
story makes the point.
it does. It does. How do we start to spot those patterns before the next lightning strike comes?
Well, lightning's going to come in. Lightning's always coming for us. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's true. So I'll focus on your question of how do we delay possibly or minimize or how do we recognize the patterns? And I'm going to go back to the beginning of our conversation. Very first thing is two words, want to. Want to. And then, of course, I guess I have to add two more words to that. Do you want to? Is anybody listening right now that wants to change something in their life? And I'm not talking about, I want to lose 3 or 4 pounds. It's not what I'm talking about. That's cosmetic. I'm talking about a course change. Are you tired of waking up every day to die just a little bit more? You know what I mean? And there's a long list of reasons. But if you want to see, first of all, you're in a pattern, by the way. If you wake up every day and you feel that way, you're already in a pattern. And I don't have to tell you to recognize it. But Anthony's question was different. Not do I know I'm in a pattern of feeling bankrupt every day. Your question was more about when I see that pattern, if I know that pattern, what behavior, what do I need to do to start making adjustments to change that behavior? And I'm gonna be very specific here. There's a lot of things, but I want to be very specific about something that I've been very mindful of in my own life here recently. When you decide to make changes, I think by default we filter those decisions, Anthony, through the word addition. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to start running. I got to go get some running shoes. I need to go do this. I need to go do that. Addition, add. Or whatever that we filter everything through addition. I need to do something to do that. I'll be happy when I get the new house or the new car. I'll have joy once I get through this. It's always about addition. But I think we're all old enough to know that we've added a lot of things to our life and we're not where we're supposed to be. It pretty much should be living proof that it was never about addition, because if it was, you would have added it already and you'd be where you're supposed to be. So if it's not about addition, then what's Scott telling me? What I'm telling you is, as far as I'm concerned, and this is the behavior with myself, I'm not telling you anything I don't do myself. It's through subtraction. It's giving something up. That's what I've been saying the entire podcast,
Yeah. You got to take,
right?
subtract.
Is subtraction, is give something up, give a part of yourself up. I'm not telling you to go give all your possessions away unless you need to do that. But no, it's through subtraction. So pattern recognition is, my opinion, my journey. Start moving away from addition and start subtraction, getting rid of the things that are just dead weights
Mm,
in your life. Yeah, for lack of a better description, but not addition and subtraction. That would be the pattern recognition, I would say.
yeah. Do you know, for me, last year, I moved in with my partner into a rental place, and I had no income coming through, and
Right.
I had a house. I'd been through like 3 redundancies in the course of owning that house, multiple mortgage holidays, and to the realization that I'd only paid something like $7,000 in 7 years of my mortgage. And I came to a realization that this is a pattern that's appeared for 7 years, and I've not been taking, stock of that.
Right.
And for me, I decided, okay, I tried to rent the house out, but the market was stuffed and there was nothing happening. So I decided, well, okay, well, do I hold on to this? Is this actually serving me, or is it? Is, and I came to the realization that it wasn't serving me, and it was time to hand it over to someone else and let it go. And as hard as that decision was, I made the split decision. Like, on one hand, I was talking to the rental agent, and then a minute later, I'm talking to the real estate agent saying I'm selling. And they were both in the same room as me. And I said, okay, no problem. Hey, let's sell the house.
Uh-huh.
And in a month, I sold the house and, money in the bank and so on. But what I learned was that, through that whole process, the amount of possessions that I'd held on to, and some of these things were from like 10, 20 years ago, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, why am I still holding on to this stuff? And I started to let go of all that stuff. And it was such a freeing experience.
That's right.
And so, the same thing happens in our own lives, is that internally, we've got all these things we're holding on to. And it could be things like hate and, and unforgiveness and all these things. Once we start to, forgive people and come from a place of love and start to let go of some of the things that are holding us back, I tell you what, your whole life changes,
It does.
and you never go back to that person
You
that
never
you
go
were.
back
No.
because you start to see the real thing. I have to tell you this real quick. This is years ago. Someone that was close to me said, Scott, can we talk? Can we go to lunch? I said, yeah, we go to lunch. And I was like, you okay? Yeah, I just need to know how you do it, man. How do you, I said, what are you talking about? You just seem to tackle everything, and you find the way to get it done. And I just can't seem to get anything done. I said, do you really want an answer? Right. And I started talking about execution, right? Execution is a fancy word for the art of getting things done. And I said, so if you want to play around with this, okay, I'm going to give you something to do because I know it to be true of all of us. I'm going to give you something to do, and you go do it, and you come back in a couple of weeks and we'll have lunch together. And you tell me what happened. Yeah, what's that? I'll do anything. So I want you to go home. I said, you got a closet, right? You got a bunch of stuff in your closet. You got t-shirts from when you graduated high school. You got all kinds of crap in there. I want you to go home. Just tell your wife what you're going to do. I want you to strip everything out of that closet that's yours. Everything. I don't want a sock. I don't want anything left in there. And the only thing I want you to put back in are the things that you actually wear. And the rest of it, you're going to give to Goodwill. Right. I don't care if it's a trophy. I don't care what it is. You need to pick. This is you. You do what you think is the right thing to do. But that's my challenge to you. We talked about it a few minutes more. And he said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. But then of course, he's like, I don't understand. I said, I don't want you to understand. You asked a question. So I'm giving you a simple exercise. You choose how much you want to. It's your choice. You choose. And then when you're done, let me know and we'll have lunch again. Came back, had lunch. And of course, he described what you said. It was, my God, you wouldn't believe the crap I gave away. It's so organized and this is great. Now my wife's doing it. But he said, okay, he said, what's next? I said, okay, I want you to do the same thing with your garage. What? So yeah, do it with the garage. Same thing. That's it. I don't even want to talk about it. Just do the same. Then I'll come back and we'll have lunch together. He did it. Came back. Man, it's never been this organized before in my life. I put shelves up, got rid of all this stuff. The shovels are this way. And that, I mean, he was excited about it. Right. So the closet's been done and the garage has been made. What's next, man? What's next? And where are we going with this? And I said, okay, now I'm going to give you the hard one. First of all, I wanted you to do those two things to prove to yourself that you could do them. That was the first thing. Broken promises, my friend. I just wanted you to see that you could do that. Now here's the one I want you to do. What's next? And just like you were pointing, I said, I need you to do that inside yourself. Silence. Silence, Anthony. You would have thought I asked him to sell his house.
Yeah.
But he understood.
He understood.
He freaking understood what I just did to him. External versus internal, man. But he got it. And he's doing his own thing right now. And I'm proud of him. And he is a better version of himself because he is working on those things. But I just wanted to share that story because we'll do anything on the outside, but we don't want to look inside.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But you knew exactly where I was going. I saw your hand point to your chest. I said, oh, Anthony sees it coming.
Well, I lived this many times, and it's not a one-off thing either. It's a continuous thing. It's constant, right? Yeah. By the way, you have given me a bit of a kick up the backside too, because just going back to the book conversation. So it's been my intention, and as of today, I'm in the process, because I'm not saying I'm going to, I'm saying I'm in the process of starting my first book of series of books. So I had an intention that every season of this podcast will be a book, and every guest will be a chapter that I write.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So you'll have a chapter of your own. I want to, and the way I've started that already is that every episode gets distilled down into a article and then into a guide.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this, you can go to the Champion Mindset Collective website or the hub, and you can look up a episode, you can read the article, and you can download the practical guide to actually help you move forward in your life. And this episode will have the same thing, and you'll be able to download this 3-page guide that all the learnings from this episode that you'll be able to then start putting it into practice today, not sometime in the future, today. And the whole intention about that guide is that you start making changes in your life today. So I just wanted to say that. Now, a lot of people...
I'm glad you said that. And I want to encourage everybody to do that, because where we are today, we need more people who are willing to tackle themselves for our neighbors, our families. And we need more people to have conversations like you and I are having, Anthony. Everybody's talking, but we need more conversations.
Absolutely. 100%. Now, Scott, many people will be listening to this and they're probably in survival mode right now. So how does a person begin to shift from just performing for outcomes to building from truth?
Yeah, I'm going to give you 2 words, and I'm going to tell you why. Lily pads. Lily pads. What does that mean? Small steps. What does that mean? Baby steps, right? Pick your mental picture. For me, I say lily pads all the time. Jumping from one lily pad to another lily pad. Small things like the closet example I just gave, right? If depending on what stage of mental crisis you're in or life challenge you're in, my encouragement to you is you don't have to go out and do an Ironman. You don't have to go write a book. Those things will come to you, but you need to start walking the way and let the way appear. And I strongly recommend that start with the very, very basics. Why the basics? Why the basics? Because you got a lot of broken promises in your life, my friend, and you don't trust yourself. And so you need to restore that trust, and you restore that trust by keeping your promises on some basic things, right? And then, believe it or not, when you can start restoring your trust on those basic things, like my friend who I said, go organize the closet, and he told me all the great things. And then he went and did the garage. You don't have to jump to the internal battle, but that would be the thing that I would leave with the audience, is not the big grand plan. That'll come. The grand plan will come. Start by restoring trust with yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And just as you were talking about that, I had a visualization or download or whatever you want to call it. But what I could see was a person standing on a road. It's a long road. You really can't see what's ahead in the distance. But the steps that you start taking, as you get closer and closer, the road gets wider and wider, right? So at the moment, your road seems like this, but the more you get closer, then it expands. And life is about expansion. It's about expanding yourself. It's about going, going in and finding out what are the things that are holding me back from being the person that I'm actually meant to be. So I encourage you, if you're watching this, to just keep taking those steps because the road will get clearer.
Yeah,
Don't You don't drive around, you don't have no clarity when you're going around the corner, but as you go around the corner, you can see what's ahead. So just
it is.
one step at a time.
It is. And I'm glad we had this opportunity to talk to the audience because I guarantee you there's somebody in the audience right now whose head's about to fall off their shoulders.
Mm,
I hope this is an encouragement to them.
yeah, yeah. And the next question I had was around how do you stop yourself from falling back into that old pattern?
It's going to happen. You can't stop it. But the deal is that it's okay. And this is, again, I'm not saying it's okay to fall back into the pattern. What I'm saying is it's okay to make mistakes along the way, right? We're not perfect. Right? We are human. It is not an algorithm where just because I did X, I'm going to get Y, causality. That's not true. That does happen sometimes, just doesn't happen all the time. The specific answer to your question of we can't stop, but what we can do, and this is important, is give yourself grace when you make a mistake.
Yeah,
You
100%.
have to live with yourself, and nobody can beat you up as good as you can beat yourself up. So when you make a mistake, when you fall off the plan, when you backtrack, when you backslide, acknowledge it, look at what happened, what transpired, learn from it. The gifts are in the failure, not the success. Learn from it, get back in the game, start moving forward, give yourself some grace, but keep moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And mistakes aren't bad things because, as someone said to me a very long time ago, is that when you make a movie, you have a lot of mistakes, but eventually get the right take, which makes you that multi-million-dollar movie. So just keep making those mistakes, but eventually you'll get the right take. Yeah,
Success will teach you nothing but failure will give you the gifts that you need to move forward.
yeah, 100%. Now, we're often taught that more effort is the answer to everything, but you say growth is about subtraction, which I totally agree with you. Can you explain how that works in practice? Well, yeah, you've actually given an example of your friend who subtracted, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's an example. I can give you another example. Just use Ironman as an example, right? Training for an Ironman race is more about subtraction than it is addition. Progressively, yes, progressively as each month goes by, I'm adding distance. I'm adding stress to my body. There's an additive effect there. Yes, that is correct. Okay. That's just part of training. But the subtraction part, right, is all the things that you have to let go of so that you can actually do the addition, which is the belief in oneself that I can do this. That's a subtraction. You have to get rid of that lie that says, I may not be able to do this. I may not be able to do the workout. Right. So there's a lot of mental discipline that has to take place. Now, it's not necessarily physical subtraction, which that's can be, but what I'm referring to is a more disciplined and more difficult exercise, which is the subtraction of all of those thoughts and negative feelings, right, that get in the way of you actually doing the addition that is important. And of course, in the triathlon race, the addition of mileage, right, time, distance. But you have to believe in yourself. It goes back to that inner discussion, that inner thought up here.
And why do we find subtracting so much scarier than adding more tasks?
It's called scarcity mentality. Once
Really?
you have something, we don't ever want to let it go.
Mm, yeah,
Ready for this? Let's go back to the beginning of the podcast. You want to own it. You're afraid of stewardship. That's why.
yeah.
But when you have a mindset of stewardship, when things come into your life and leave, you're like, okay,
Mm, yeah.
I don't.
It was there for a season.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
there for a season. That was great. I loved it.
And a reason.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Next. What's next? Yeah.
Exactly. Now, for a person sitting in their car at home right now, feeling like they've just been hit by a lightning strike,
Yeah.
what is one thing that they need to hear about their future?
Well, if you have been hit by a lightning strike in your life, I'm going to tell you something that you don't believe anymore right now, which is you're going to be okay. You are. You're going to be okay. Subject to your willingness to pick yourself back up, even if you have to get on your knees and move one step forward on that lily pad. just keep moving forward. And I've been there more times in my life than I ever want to go back and do again. But lightning's coming for all of us. And when it arrives, it is what it is. And I'm not saying there's not a time for mourning, a time for crying, a time for anger. I'm not saying any of those things. Those are natural human emotions. But what I am saying to you is that you need to make a decision sooner rather than later to get back up, and you need to move forward. Because if you turn left or right or go backwards, you're not going anywhere. What you need, where you want to go, the recovery, that's all ahead of you. It's all forward. So even if it's a lily pad, move forward. That's what I'd like to tell you.
Yeah. And if someone's feeling like they've already lost too much already, what would you say to them?
Congratulations. You lost. I'm sorry to you. That's the last thing you want to hear, but I'm going to tell you congratulations. People talk about, I'm going to rebuild. Rebuild what? You're going to rebuild what you've already lost? Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So no, it's not about rebuilding, right?
It's a new build.
Huh?
It's a new
Do
build.
what?
It's
Yeah,
a new
it's a
build.
new build, man.
Yeah.
So that's why I say congratulations. Change your mindset. Don't rebuild out of the burnt ashes. That's gone. It's gone. Let's apply that same logic to when they stole my company and my childhood health passport. Why didn't I just go rebuild? No, they burnt that down. Okay. But I will tell you this, the new build that came after that, far better. And you ready for this? You know what the new build was, Anthony? It was me.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the gift, man.
That's
The new build was me.
Yeah.
So to those who, if that's where you are, I know you don't want to hear this, but congratulations. Get started on the new build. That's something to be excited about. Screw rebuilding.
Yeah.
That's what I get excited about.
Yeah. And how would you say to them how they can find the strength to see it as an invitation instead of an end?
Again, you got to make a choice. You've got two voices in your head. One that says you don't have the strength. The other one says you do. Only one of them can be in charge, my friend. And that's why I said you have to choose. So I'm not the guy. I'm sorry. I am not the guy that you come tell me that I can't move forward. Don't tell me that crap. I'm not going to agree with you. I'm going to tell you to stop lying to yourself because I don't want to listen to it. Okay. So you can go forward or you can go backward. It's your choice. And so you need to pick. And you know which one I'm in favor of is you pick, you're going to move forward.
Yep.
And it's one other thing I want to tell everybody. We punish ourselves. We get confused. Ready for this? We're always punishing ourselves, Anthony, over a single word called distance. You said it earlier. We're too far gone. What do you mean you're too far gone? What the hell are you talking about? Did you change from where you're standing right now to somewhere else? You're standing where you're standing. What are you talking about? Stop making crap up. You're not too far gone. You're confused because you're worried about distance. You know what I do now, Anthony? I don't care about distance anymore. Can you believe that? I literally don't care about distance. I care about a different word that starts with D. You know what it's called? Direction. That's all I care about. Am I moving the right direction? I don't worry about distance anymore. Not one time when I was writing my book did I say, oh my God, I'm behind. No, not one time. It took me 2 freaking years to write it and get it published.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all I cared about, Anthony, was my going the right direction. And every time I reaffirmed I was going the right direction, that was good.
Yeah. And it starts with clarity. Once you start going internally and figuring out exactly where you are, where you want to go, you've got the clarity, then you can go in the right direction. And as I said before, the road may not be clear at this moment, but as you keep taking the steps and get closer and closer to that part of the road, it will become clear.
Man, we have covered a lot of really powerful topics. I can't wait to see your meeting notes on your website. I need to go back and look at them myself.
Oh, absolutely. There'll be a deep dive into this episode.
But yeah, focus on direction, not distance, and get fulfillment from that you're moving in the right direction. Because if you keep moving in the right direction, what happens, Anthony? Well, you get some places.
You get exactly, and don't deviate from it. Just keep moving.
Yeah,
definitely pivot if you need to, but do not look backwards. What I was going to say is that the book by Benjamin Harvey, the Gap and the Gain, is a brilliant book around what we said before about we're scared to lose things and we're scared, we're always living in the gap rather than the gain. And it's like, well, I don't have enough of this, right? But it's like if you're climbing up a mountain and you look down, you don't say, oh, I'm not there yet, but you look back and you go, look how far I've come, right? Because that mountain, you're going to have to keep, you might get to the peak of the mountain, but there's going to be another mountain to climb.
Yeah.
So it's rather than focusing on what you haven't got, is focus on how far you've come and what you've actually achieved.
Yeah.
And that should be enough fuel to get you further.
It should be. But again, these are all lessons. We've talked about some really powerful things, but man, you got to put the work in to discover the things that we've talked about. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not like you can just be going through life and then all of a sudden go, oh, what did Scott say at chapter 9? Let me go to chapter 9. No, no, you have to work on these things and learn these things, become life skills.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
Also, someone else's chapter is a different chapter for you as well. So
you aren't kidding. That's
yeah,
why we're all on different journeys. You and I can be walking the exact same road together, but we've got different destinations.
100%. Yeah. Now, Scott, like you said, we've gone deep into a whole lot of conversations, and I love deep conversation. Can't be bothered with shallow stuff. But people have been listening to this, and they obviously resonate with you, and they would like to get in touch, or tell us about how they can contact you. Tell us about the book, where they can get that, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Anthony. Listen, strongly recommend. Go to Amazon, easiest place to get it. Go to Amazon, or you can get a Kindle. The title of the book is Wake Up to Die Again by Scott Lackey. This is the book cover. You can see the moon at the top there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a story behind this book cover, but I'll leave it up to the readers to figure that out in the book. Or you can go to my website, scottlackey.com. But I know, Anthony, you would love this, and I would love this if there's somebody listening right now that this has inspired them to change directions. Send me an email. I would just love to know. You know what I mean? And I know you would as well. I'm inspired. People ask me, well, Scott, what inspires you now? It's other people. That's what inspires me now, is seeing other people invest in themselves and make changes. So I hope you'll go and read the book, because there are 24 very meaningful chapters that will give you some guideposts through, regardless of where you are in your life, whether you're in a dark place right now or you're in a good place right now, but you need to figure out what your next playbook is. My book will meet you in either one of those places. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share that with everybody. It's Wake Up to Die Again. And or you can contact me directly at my website, scottlackey.com.
We'll put those into the show notes, but also there'll be a dedicated page for this episode on the championmindsetcollective.com hub. You can, as I said before, you can read about the episode, you can watch the videos, you can read the article, and you can also download the practical guide, which is just going to help you take action on what we have listened to today. Now, Scott, we have 6 really quick fire questions, and these you can answer in a short sentence or a single word. And the first question for you is, how do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Sure. Much of my early life, success was around what the world told me it was. Look this way, think this way, drive this, buy this, own this, have this. That's what I thought success was. And every single time I arrived, nothing was there. And so I started to question that. And it was like, well, I know you don't have it right now, but just keep going a little further, around the corner, over the hill, almost there. Never arrived. That was a large part of my early life. Created some lightning strikes, Anthony. But success for me now, radically different. I don't need a possession, a place, a thing, a distance to be happy, to have joy, to have peace in my life, right? Success for me now is spending time with my wife and my son and my daughter. That's success for me. I care. My number one most important thing is to take care of my family. And then I start layering things after that. It's family first. Second, helping other people. That act of service, right, is that I look for opportunities to serve, because when I do that, I'm sacrificing a part of myself, and then I'm gain something from that, right? I find something else within myself when I do this. So I look for those opportunities. And one of those was in the form of the book, and getting that book published, which is opening up opportunities for me to come speak to people. And so I love getting on the stage and sharing those things, because here again, I don't mind sacrificing a part of myself so that other people can learn what I learned, and if I can be a contributor to that. So that's what success looks like for me today.
Yeah. Who's been your greatest inspiration, and why?
Oh, you're going to hate this answer. Me. And I know
Me?
it sounds arrogant,
No,
but
I
it's
love it.
me.
No,
No, it
absolutely.
is. And again, I don't mean it arrogantly, but it's me. There was nobody there to pull me out of the ditch. Nobody. And I was responsible for that. And so I'm thankful that I learned those lessons, and I'm going to continue to look to myself to improve myself. And that's the answer.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
It's about subtraction, not addition. Most people disagree with that. Yeah. They don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. If you could go back and give young Scott some advice, what would that be?
That's a really easy one. I said it in my opening question. Scott, it's not about possessions, my friend. It's not. It's about what's going on inside. and you need to figure out what is it inside you that you think possessions are going to fix. Because if you can fix that, your life's going to change.
What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
The world, huh? The whole blue planet?
Yeah, and beyond.
Beyond,
Maybe
yeah,
some
good point.
aliens will be listening as well.
Yeah. According to the releases, right? In the last it's been 48 hours or so, but a message for the world. That's just way bigger than I think, Anthony. But I'll throw this out there, right? Please, if I could, I'm not even a question. It's a beg. It's a beg. Focus on fixing yourself, not the world. Turn inward, because if you're willing to do the work to become a better version of yourself, if you're willing to do that world, you're going to make this place a better place. That's the way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah. When I started this podcast 2.5, 3 years ago, the basis of, or the foundation of this podcast is be the change in the world that you want to see.
Amen.
So this is, this is who I am as well, as I'm constantly changing to become a better version of myself so that, I can then change the world. But it can't, I can change my world myself. Scott, you can change your world, but together, collectively, which is why it's called the collective, we can change the world together. Last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
So I don't define myself as a champion. I just want to be clear about that. And so to be a champion, it's going to have to be someone telling me that what I did to help them was meaningful in their life. Not only is that to me being a champion, is that when you've helped someone else out of a ditch, out of a hole, or you've encouraged them and they tell you that, that's when you can say you're a champion. You're not going to hear me say I'm a champion. You're not going to hear it. Okay. But I will accept it if someone tells me that they feel that way because I helped them. I will accept that. So that's the champion word. But really through that answer, you now know what a champion mindset looks like for me, right? Is whether it's through my book or I have a weekly column that's published in the newspaper every Saturday. And I discuss some of these topics in that weekly column. My speaking, my interactions with other people, I try my best to practice this mindset with other people. And so that to me is a championship mindset. And that's what makes a difference.
Absolutely. Scott, thank you so much for being here on this podcast episode. The one thing that's going to stay with me is that the chat of the lightning strike, and how it doesn't just break things, but it reveals what we're actually built on. I think that anyone listening to this episode, if you're feeling stuck, this is an invitation today to look at what you're trying to carry through that door that's too small for your old ego. Right? Let go. It's time to let go of some of the things that are holding you back. If this conversation has hit home for you, please subscribe. Please share this with someone who might be able to benefit from this, who might be going through their own before and after moment right now. And if you can find more about Scott's work on his book, on the show notes, and also on the episode page that I'll be publishing. Thanks for being part of the Champion Mindset Collective, and I'll see you in the next episode. But before I finish that, keep cultivating a champion mindset. And lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.